The mop clattered to the floor as Maria Santos froze, her weathered hands trembling as she stared at the photograph that had fallen from the confidential folder. Her own face stared back at her, but not as she was now, with graying hair pulled back in a simple ponytail and wearing a faded cleaning uniform. This was her 20 years ago, in full military dress, standing beside men whose faces she recognized from wanted posters and classified briefings she was never supposed to see. Preparing and narrating this type of story took us long efforts and hard work, so if you are enjoying this story, please consider subscribing to our channel. "Ma'am, you need to step away from that desk." The voice behind her was calm but carried an unmistakable authority. Maria turned slowly, her heart hammering against her ribs. 3 men in civilian clothes stood in the doorway of the Pentagon office she'd been cleaning for the past 9 years. They weren't security guards. Their posture, their watchful eyes, the way they filled the space spoke of military training at the highest levels. I was just cleaning," she whispered, her accented English barely audible. "The folder, it fell. I didn't mean to." "Maria Elena Santos," the tallest man said, stepping forward. His voice held no accusation, only a strange mixture of respect and something that might have been relief. "Former Lieutenant Colonel, 75th Ranger Regiment, Medal of Honor recipient, we've been looking for you for a very long time." The words hit her like a physical blow. No one had called her by her rank in 2 decades. No one knew who she really was, or who she had been. She was just Maria, the quiet cleaning lady who arrived early and left late, who spoke broken English and kept her head down. She was invisible, forgotten, safe. "I think you have me confused with someone else," she said, backing toward the window. Her fingers found the emergency radio clipped to her belt. Standard issue for all cleaning staff. But these weren't ordinary circumstances. The second man, shorter but with the same predatory alertness, pulled out a tablet. The screen showed a classified military database entry with her photograph, her service record, and a red stamp across the top that made her blood run cold. Deceased, classified operation. According to official records, Lieutenant Colonel Maria Santos died in Afghanistan in 2004 during Operation Crimson Dawn, he said quietly. But cleaning lady Maria Santos has been walking the halls of the Pentagon every night for 9 years, with security clearance that should have been impossible to obtain under her assumed identity. Someone very powerful wanted you hidden, Maria. The question is, was it to protect you, or to protect themselves? Maria's mind raced as she studied the 3 men before her. Their casual clothes couldn't hide their military bearing. The way they stood with weight evenly distributed, ready to move in any direction. The way their eyes constantly scanned the room for threats and exits. She recognized it because she'd once carried herself the same way. "Who are you?" she asked, straightening her spine despite the cleaning uniform that suddenly felt like a costume. "Lieutenant Commander Jake Morrison, Naval Special Warfare Development Group," the tall man said, using the official name for SEAL Team 6. "This is Petty Officer First Class Tony Rivera and Chief Warrant Officer Sam Chen. We're part of a joint task force investigating irregularities in Department of Defense personnel records." Rivera, the shorter man with the tablet, stepped closer. "Ma'am, with respect, we know exactly who you are. The question is whether you know why you're really here." Maria's hand moved instinctively to her throat, where a thin scar disappeared beneath her uniform collar. The movement didn't go unnoticed. Chen's eyes tracked it immediately. She forced herself to stand still. "I work for Potomac Cleaning Services," she said carefully. "I have for 9 years. I clean offices, empty trash cans, mop floors, that's all." Morrison exchanged a look with his teammates. "Maria, Potomac Cleaning Services is a shell company. It was created specifically to get you access to this building. The woman who hired you, Jennifer Walsh, died in a car accident 6 months after your employment began. The company has been running on autopilot ever since, with payments coming from an untraceable account." The revelation hit her like a physical blow. Jennifer Walsh had been kind to her, understanding when Maria's English was shaky, patient with her fear of authority figures. She'd offered Maria a lifeline when she'd been desperate, alone, and running from shadows she couldn't name. "That's impossible," Maria whispered. "The security clearance you were given to work in classified areas, do you remember how you got it?" Chen asked, his voice gentler than his appearance suggested. Maria closed her eyes, trying to remember. Those first months were a blur of fear and exhaustion. She'd been living in a homeless shelter, barely speaking English, when Jennifer had found her. The clearance process had been surprisingly quick, handled by Jennifer personally. She said she had connections, Maria said slowly, that my background check came back clean because I had no criminal history in the United States. Your background check came back clean because someone with very high-level access doctored the system, Rivera said, scrolling through his tablet. Maria Santos, illegal immigrant from El Salvador, age 45, no living relatives. A perfect cover identity. But whoever created it made one mistake. They used your real fingerprints. Fingerprints that match a Medal of Honor recipient who supposedly died 20 years ago, Morrison added. A recipient whose classified mission files were sealed so deeply that even we shouldn't have access to them. But someone wanted us to find those files. Someone left us a trail of breadcrumbs. Maria felt the walls of the small office closing in around her. For 9 years, she'd felt safe in her anonymity. She'd built a small, quiet life. A studio apartment in Alexandria, a routine that never varied, relationships that stayed surface level. She'd learned to become invisible, to blend into the background noise of American life. I need to sit down, she said, reaching for the chair behind the desk. Ma'am, we need to move, Morrison said urgently. This conversation was supposed to happen in a secure facility, but when we tracked you to this building tonight, we had to improvise. The longer we stay here, the greater the risk that whoever's been protecting you, or watching you, will realize their secret is out. Or, Chen added grimly, whoever killed your team in Afghanistan will realize you're still alive. The mention of her team sent a jolt of pain through Maria's chest. 20 years hadn't dulled the ache of losing them. Captain Williams, who'd taught her to read tactical maps by lamplight in freezing mountain caves. Sergeant Rodriguez, who'd shared pictures of his daughter and made her promise to tell her about him if he didn't make it home. Lieutenant Hayes, barely older than the enlisted men but carrying the weight of their lives with quiet determination. How do you know about my team? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Morrison pulled out his own device, showing her a classified file marked with timestamps from just 3 hours ago. Because their files were declassified tonight. All of them. After 20 years of being buried so deep that their families were told they died in a training accident, someone pushed a button and made their real mission available to anyone with proper clearance. That's not possible. Operation Crimson Dawn was above your pay grade, we know, Rivera interrupted. Even as the team leader, you weren't told the full scope. But we've read the files, Maria. We know what you were really doing in those mountains. Maria's legs gave out, and she sank into the chair. Operation Crimson Dawn. Even thinking the name brought back the smell of cordite and snow, the weight of her rifle, the sound of Hayes calling for air support that would never come. You were hunting Viktor Kozlov, Chen said quietly. Russian arms dealer, former Spetsnaz, responsible for supplying weapons to 3 different terrorist organizations. The CIA had been tracking him for 2 years, but he was too well connected, too careful. So they created a joint task force, Rangers and CIA operatives, to take him down in his mountain compound. But Kozlov was expecting you, Morrison continued. He had detailed intelligence about your mission, your route, even your extraction point. Your team walked into a kill box. Maria closed her eyes, remembering. The way the silence had felt wrong as they'd approached the compound. The way Rodriguez had stopped and tilted his head, listening to something she couldn't hear. The first muzzle flash from the rocks above them. How did you survive? Rivera asked. The question she'd been dreading for 20 years. The question that had haunted her dreams and driven her to hide behind a fake identity. The question that made her wake up screaming in that studio apartment, convinced that someone would figure out the truth. I was thrown clear when the IED went off, she said mechanically, the lie she'd rehearsed so many times it almost felt real. I was unconscious for 3 days. When I woke up, the compound was empty. My team was... She couldn't finish. That's not what happened, Morrison said, but his voice held no accusation. We've seen the satellite footage that was finally declassified. The footage that shows you making it out of that kill box. Fighting your way through 12 armed men. Carrying Hayes on your back for 2 miles before he died from his wounds. The footage that shows you being extracted by an unmarked helicopter that wasn't part of your original mission plan, Chin added. Maria opened her eyes and stared at them. What are you saying? We're saying that someone very powerful wanted Viktor Kozlov dead, and they were willing to sacrifice your entire team to make it happen, Rivera said. But they didn't count on you being as good as you were. When you survived, when you made it out with intelligence that could expose the whole operation, they had to make a choice: kill you or disappear you. They chose to disappear you, Morrison said, give you a new identity, a new life, but keep you close where they could watch you. The Pentagon has some of the best surveillance in the world. Every move you've made for 9 years has been monitored, cataloged, analyzed. Maria thought about the small kindnesses she'd received over the years. The apartment that became available just when she needed it, with a landlord who didn't ask too many questions about her immigration status. The community college ESL classes that had been mysteriously funded by an anonymous scholarship. The medical clinic that had treated her injuries without requiring insurance or full payment. Someone's been taking care of you, she said slowly, understanding beginning to dawn. Or someone's been keeping you on ice until they needed you, Chen corrected grimly. Morrison's radio crackled to life. A voice spoke in rapid, coded phrases that Maria recognized as military communications. Morrison's expression grew tense. "We need to go, now," he said. "Security sweep is ahead of schedule. If they find us here with you, this conversation never happened and you disappear again, possibly permanently this time." "Where?" Maria asked, standing on shaking legs. "Somewhere safe. Somewhere we can figure out who's been pulling the strings for 20 years. And why they decided tonight was the time to cut them loose." As they moved toward the door, Maria caught sight of herself in the window's reflection. For just a moment, superimposed over the cleaning lady in the faded uniform, she saw the soldier she'd once been. The woman who'd led men into combat and brought them home. The woman who'd earned a Medal of Honor for actions she wasn't allowed to remember officially. "Lieutenant Colonel Santos," Morrison said as they reached the hallway. "Welcome back to the war." The service corridors beneath the Pentagon were a maze that Maria had navigated thousands of times, but never like this. Morrison took point, his movements fluid and silent despite the concrete floors. Rivera and Chen flanked her, their eyes constantly scanning for threats that she was only beginning to understand might exist. "Where are we going?" she whispered as they descended a staircase she'd never seen before. "Sub-basement level 7, Morrison replied without turning around. "Officially, it doesn't exist. Unofficially, it's where we store things that are too sensitive for official storage. And people who are too dangerous for official acknowledgement," Chen added grimly. They passed through 3 different security checkpoints, each one requiring biometric scans from all 4 of them. Maria was surprised when her palm print and retinal scan were accepted without question. "They've been expecting you," Rivera observed, noting her expression. "Someone's been planning this reunion for a long time." The corridor opened into a secure briefing room that looked like something from a spy movie. Banks of monitors covered one wall, displaying satellite feeds, intelligence reports, and what appeared to be surveillance footage from around the world. A conference table dominated the center, surrounded by chairs that had seen serious use. 2 people were waiting for them. The woman was in her 60s, silver-haired and sharp-eyed, wearing a Navy suit that screamed senior intelligence official. The man beside her was younger, maybe 40, with the lean build and watchful eyes of someone accustomed to dangerous work. Both rose as the group entered. "Lieutenant Colonel Santos," the woman said, extending her hand. "I'm Deputy Director Sarah Chen, CIA. This is Agent Marcus Reed, FBI Counterintelligence. We've been waiting a long time to meet you." Maria shook their hands automatically, her mind struggling to process the situation. "I don't understand. If you knew who I was, why didn't you?" "Because until 6 hours ago, we didn't know you were alive," Agent Reed interrupted. "According to every official record we had access to, you died with your team in Afghanistan. Your body was never recovered, but that wasn't unusual given the mountainous terrain and the extensive nature of the explosion." Deputy Director Chen gestured for everyone to sit. "Maria, what do you remember about the extraction from Operation Crimson Dawn?" "I told them," Maria said, nodding toward the SEALs. "I was unconscious. When I woke up, everyone was dead. I waited for extraction that never came." "Try again," Chen said, but her voice was gentle. "We've administered a mild sedative through the ventilation system. Nothing harmful, just something to help with memory recall. Sometimes trauma creates false memories as a protective mechanism." Maria felt slightly lightheaded, and suddenly the sterile briefing room seemed to shimmer around the edges. Images began flooding back. Not the sanitized version she'd been telling herself for 20 years, but the real memories that she'd buried so deep they felt like someone else's nightmares. The sound of Hayes dying in her arms, begging her to tell his wife he loved her. The weight of Rodriguez's dog tags in her pocket as she left his body behind. The moment she'd realized that the intelligence they'd gathered about Kozlov's operation was bigger than anyone had told them, that they'd stumbled onto something that reached into the highest levels of the U.S. government. "The helicopter," she whispered, the memory crystallizing with painful clarity. "It wasn't one of ours." "Go on," Morrison encouraged. "Russian markings, but the crew spoke English, no accents. They knew my name, my rank, they knew about the intelligence I'd gathered." Maria's hands began to shake as the full memory returned. "They said they were taking me somewhere safe. They said there were people in Washington who wanted me dead, and this was the only way to protect me." "Who were they?" Reed asked. "I don't know. They kept their faces covered. But one of them, the pilot, he had a scar on his hand, shaped like a crescent moon. I only saw it when he helped me into the helicopter." Chen and Reed exchanged a look that made Maria's blood run cold. "Maria," Chen said carefully, "that helicopter crew worked for Viktor Kozlov." The room spun around her. "That's impossible. Kozlov was the target. He was CIA," Reed said bluntly. "Deep cover for 15 years. The arms dealing, the terrorist connections, all of it was part of a long-term operation to infiltrate and dismantle the organizations he was supplying. Operation Crimson Dawn wasn't meant to kill him, it was meant to extract him and his intelligence." "But something went wrong," Morrison continued. "Someone in Washington decided that Kozlov knew too much, that he'd become a liability. They sent your team to eliminate him and destroy the evidence." "Except Kozlov had been expecting it," Chen said. "He'd been monitoring communications, and he knew about the kill order. So he set up the ambush, eliminated the team that was sent to kill him, and disappeared with the one person who might be able to expose the whole operation." "Me," Maria whispered. "You," Reed confirmed. "You had seen the classified intelligence about Kozlov's network. You knew the names of his contacts, the scope of his operation, the identity of his handlers. Information that could bring down half the intelligence establishment if it ever went public. So he kept me alive as insurance, and gave you a new identity. A new life. A place where you could be monitored and controlled without knowing it," Chen said. "The perfect solution. You were too valuable to kill, too dangerous to set free, so he made you disappear in plain sight." Maria stood abruptly, pacing to the wall of monitors. One screen showed surveillance footage of her apartment building. Another showed the Pentagon cleaning schedule with her name highlighted. A third displayed financial records showing the payments that had kept her invisible life running smoothly. 20 years, she said, staring at the evidence of her captivity. 20 years of being a prisoner who didn't know she was in jail. "But something changed," Rivera said. "Someone decided it was time to end the arrangement. The question is who and why now?" Chen pulled out a tablet and swiped to a news article dated that morning. The headline read, "Former CIA operative Viktor Kozlov found dead in Moscow hotel room." "Kozlov was assassinated 12 hours ago," she said. "Professional job, no witnesses, no evidence. But before he died, he sent a package to every major intelligence agency in the world. Files, recordings, evidence of the operation that's kept you hidden for 2 decades. Including the real story of Operation Crimson Dawn," Reed added, "and the names of everyone who was involved in the cover-up." Maria turned back to face them. "What do you want from me?" "We want you to help us find the people who killed your team," Morrison said. "The people who've been using you as a bargaining chip for 20 years. The people who are probably planning to eliminate you now that their secret is out." "And in exchange?" "In exchange," Chen said, "you get your life back, your real name, your service record, the recognition you earned. And justice for Captain Williams, Sergeant Rodriguez, and Lieutenant Hayes." Maria closed her eyes and saw their faces again, young, determined, trusting her to bring them home safely. She'd failed them once, she wouldn't fail them again. "What do you need me to do?" The safe house was a nondescript suburban home in Arlington, Virginia, the kind of place that would never attract a second glance from neighbors walking their dogs or children riding bicycles. But Maria noticed the details that marked it as something more than it appeared. Reinforced windows, multiple escape routes, and the subtle electronic surveillance that she recognized from her military training. "Welcome to your home away from home," Agent Reed said as they entered through the garage. "At least until we figure out who's been running your life for the past 2 decades. The interior was sparse but comfortable. Standard government furniture that could be easily replaced, walls free of personal items or identifying marks. Maria had lived in similar spaces during her military service, places designed for temporary occupation by people whose lives were measured in missions rather than years. Deputy Director Chen was already inside, surrounded by boxes of files and a laptop displaying what appeared to be organizational charts. She looked up as they entered. "Maria, I need you to look at something," she said, gesturing to a chair beside her. "We've been analyzing Kozlov's final intelligence dump, and there are references to Operation Crimson Dawn that don't match the official files." Maria sat down reluctantly. Every instinct told her to run, to disappear back into the anonymous life she'd built. But the faces of her dead teammates seemed to hover at the edge of her vision, demanding justice she'd been unable to give them. "According to Kozlov's records," Chen continued, "your team wasn't the only unit deployed to Afghanistan that week. There was a second team, Delta Force operatives, who were supposed to provide backup support." "I never saw any Delta Force personnel," Maria said immediately. "Because they were there to clean up," Morrison said grimly. He'd been studying another laptop across the room. "Their orders were to eliminate any survivors from the primary operation, including your team." The revelation hit Maria like a physical blow. "Our own people were supposed to kill us?" "Not our people," Reed corrected. "A rogue faction within the intelligence community. People who had been using Kozlov's network for their own purposes. Drug smuggling, arms dealing, assassination contracts. When Kozlov decided he wanted out, they needed to eliminate everyone who knew about the operation. But you survived," Chen said. "And somehow, instead of being killed by the cleanup team, you were extracted by Kozlov himself. Why?" Maria stood and walked to the window, looking out at the peaceful suburban street. A woman was pushing a stroller, talking on her phone. A man was washing his car in his driveway. Normal people living normal lives. Unaware that 3 houses down, someone was discussing assassination plots and government corruption. "Well, I've been thinking about that," she said slowly. "About the helicopter crew. They knew too much about me, about the mission. Things that only someone with high-level access would know." "Go on," Morrison encouraged. "What if Kozlov wasn't working alone? What if he had someone inside the operation? Someone who warned him about the kill order?" "A mole," Reed said thoughtfully. "Someone high enough up the chain to know about both the primary mission and the cleanup operation." Chen pulled up another file on her laptop. "Maria, I'm going to show you photographs of everyone who had access to Operation Crimson Dawn intelligence. I want you to look carefully and tell me if any of these faces seem familiar." The first few photographs were clearly intelligence officials, older men in expensive suits, the kind of people who made decisions from offices far from the battlefield. Maria studied each face carefully, searching her memory for any recognition. Then she saw him. "Stop," she said, her voice tight with recognition. "Go back to the previous photo." Chen clicked back to an image of a man in his 40s, dark hair, pale eyes, wearing the uniform of an Army colonel. The name beneath read, "Colonel James Morrison, Defense Intelligence Agency." "Morrison," Maria said, looking at the SEAL team leader. "Any relation?" Jake Morrison's face had gone pale. "My father," he said quietly. The room fell silent. Maria studied the younger Morrison's face, seeing the family resemblance she'd missed before. The same strong jawline, the same steady eyes. But where the father looked comfortable behind a desk, the son carried the weathered look of someone who'd seen combat. "Your father had access to our mission files?" Maria asked. "He was one of the planners," Morrison admitted. "I never knew the details. I was just a junior officer at the time, working my way up through the SEAL teams. But I knew he was involved in some kind of classified operation in Afghanistan." "Jake," Chen said carefully, "when did you volunteer for this task force?" 3 days ago. My commanding officer said they needed someone with experience in classified operations and a clean security record." Morrison's voice was strained. "He said it was a career-making assignment." Reed was already on his phone, speaking in rapid, coded phrases. When he hung up, his expression was grim. Colonel James Morrison died in a car accident 6 months ago, he said. But someone using his security credentials accessed classified files related to Operation Crimson Dawn 2 weeks ago. Impossible, Morrison said. My father's been dead for... He stopped, his face going even paler. 6 months, the same time Kozlov was killed. Someone's been cleaning house, Chen said, eliminating everyone who knew about the original operation. Your father, Kozlov, probably others we haven't identified yet. But why now? Maria asked. Why wait 20 years? Morrison was staring at his hands, and Maria could see him struggling with something. Finally, he looked up. Because someone knew this day would come, he said. Someone knew that eventually the truth would surface. So they've been positioning pieces on the chessboard, making sure they controlled all the players when the game finally ended. Including you, Reed said bluntly. Jake, you weren't assigned to this task force because of your qualifications. You were assigned because your father was part of the original conspiracy, and someone wanted his son involved in the cleanup. And me, Maria added, understanding beginning to dawn. I wasn't hidden away from my protection. I was kept alive because someone knew they'd eventually need me. Need you for what? Chen asked. Maria walked back to the table and picked up one of the classified files. The pages were filled with technical specifications, financial records, and operational details that painted a picture of an intelligence operation far more complex than a simple arms dealer takedown. Kozlov wasn't just selling weapons, she said, scanning the documents. He was running a network of operatives throughout the Middle East and Eastern Europe, operatives who are still in place, still active. With Kozlov dead, someone needs to take control of that network. Someone who knows the operation intimately, Morrison said, following her logic. Someone who was there at the beginning. Someone like the surviving member of the team that was supposed to eliminate Kozlov 20 years ago, Reed concluded. Chen's phone buzzed with an urgent message. She read it quickly, her face growing pale. We have a problem, she said. 3 hours ago, someone accessed the Pentagon's personnel database using Maria's cleaning service credentials. They downloaded files on every member of this task force. They know we're here, Morrison said, already moving toward the weapons cabinet. They've always known we're here, Maria corrected. This was all part of the plan. Bring me out of hiding, assemble a team to investigate the conspiracy, then eliminate everyone who knows the truth. An explosion rocked the house, shattering windows and throwing them all to the floor. Through the smoke and debris, Maria could see black-clad figures moving toward the house from multiple directions. How many? Morrison shouted, checking his weapon. At least 8, Reed called back from the window. Professional gear, military-grade weapons. These aren't cleanup crews, Chen said grimly. These are the people who've been running the operation for 20 years. And they're here to close the books permanently. Maria felt something she hadn't experienced in 2 decades. The cold, focused clarity that had made her a decorated combat leader. The cleaning lady who'd scrubbed floors and emptied trash cans for 9 years disappeared, replaced by the soldier who'd earned a Medal of Honor for actions under fire. Riley, take the back exit, she ordered, falling automatically into command mode. Chen, call for backup but don't expect it to arrive in time. Morrison, you're with me. We're going out the front. Ma'am, with respect, Morrison began. Lieutenant Commander, I outrank you, Maria said sharply. And right now, I'm the only one here who's been through this before. These people killed my team 20 years ago. They're not killing another one today. As they prepared to move, Maria caught sight of herself in a broken mirror. For the first time in 20 years, she looked like a soldier again. We're deep into this incredible story now, and I hope you're as captivated as I am by these unfolding events. The amount of effort that goes into researching, writing, and narrating these novel-length stories is immense. We're talking about creating content equivalent to a published book. But it's worth it to bring you stories that truly engage and transport you to another world. If you're enjoying this journey so far, please take a second to like this video and share it with friends who appreciate great storytelling. Your support means everything and helps us continue creating these detailed, epic narratives. We still have so much more to discover together, so let's see how this situation unfolds. The gunfight that followed was unlike anything Maria had experienced since Afghanistan. These weren't insurgents with outdated weapons and poor training. These were professional soldiers with state-of-the-art equipment and tactical coordination that spoke of years working together. Morrison moved with the fluid efficiency she remembered from her own special operations training, covering her advance as they fought their way toward the garage. Reed had taken a bullet in the shoulder but was still returning fire from behind an overturned table. Chen was on the radio, speaking in urgent whispers to someone who might or might not send help. "There," Morrison called out, pointing toward a black SUV parked across the street. "We can make it if we move now." "Negative," Maria replied, studying the tactical situation. "That's what they want us to do. Classic funnel maneuver. Drive us toward the vehicle, then take us out when we're exposed." "Then what do you suggest?" Maria smiled grimly. "We give them what they expect, but not how they expect it." She grabbed 2 smoke grenades from Morrison's tactical vest and pulled the pins. "On my mark, we go out the front door together." But instead of heading for the car, we split left and right. The smoke will give us maybe 30 seconds of concealment. And then? Then we do what they're not expecting. We attack. The smoke filled the front yard with thick, gray concealment. Maria heard the attackers calling to each other in coded phrases, repositioning to cover the expected escape routes. She counted to 15, then moved. 20 years of mopping floors and emptying trash cans hadn't dulled her combat instincts. She moved through the smoke like a ghost, using terrain and cover she'd studied through the windows during their brief time in the safe house. The first attacker never saw her coming. She took him down with a combination of hand-to-hand techniques that her body remembered even when her mind had tried to forget. His weapon was an HK-416 with high-end optics and custom modifications. Professional grade, not the kind of equipment available to civilian contractors. These people had military funding and government connections. Morrison's voice crackled through her earpiece. 2 down on the left flank, moving to support Chen and Reed. "Copy that. I'm working my way around to the command vehicle." Every professional operation had a command element. Someone coordinating the attack, calling the shots, managing communications. Maria approached from the rear, using skills she'd learned in Afghanistan and refined during her years of observation. The security system was sophisticated but not insurmountable. She'd spent enough time in government buildings to recognize the standard configurations. She was inside within 15 minutes. The house was quiet but not empty. She could hear movement on the second floor, the sound of someone packing quickly. Whitman was preparing to run. The attack on the safe house had been his final play, and when it failed, he'd activated his escape plan. Maria moved through the ground floor silently, studying family photographs and personal items that told the story of Charles Whitman's life. Military service in Iraq and Afghanistan. A wife who died of cancer 10 years earlier. 2 children who lived on the West Coast and rarely visited, judging by the outdated photos and lack of recent correspondence. A man who dedicated his life to serving his country, only to become the thing he'd once fought against. She found him in his study, transferring files from a safe to a briefcase. He was older than she remembered, gray-haired and thin, but his movements were still precise and controlled. When he turned and saw her standing in the doorway, he didn't seem surprised. "Lieutenant Colonel Santos," he said calmly, "I was wondering when you'd find me." "Deputy Director Whitman," she replied, keeping her weapon trained on him. "We need to talk." "I imagine we do," he gestured to a chair across from his desk. "Please, sit. I think you'll find my story more complicated than you expect." "I'll stand, thank you, and I think I know exactly how complicated your story is. You've been running black operations for 15 years, using Kozlov's network to fund off-the-books missions. When he wanted out, you decided to eliminate everyone who knew about the arrangement. "Including your team," Whitman said. "Yes, that's all true, but it's not the whole truth." "Then enlighten me." Whitman sat down heavily behind his desk, suddenly looking every one of his 60-plus years. "Do you know what Kozlov's network was really doing, Maria, beyond the arms dealing and the terrorist connections?" "I know it was extensive. I know it reached into multiple governments and criminal organizations." "It was preventing wars," Whitman said quietly. "For 15 years, Viktor Kozlov used his position to identify and eliminate threats before they could destabilize entire regions. The weapons he sold were carefully chosen to maintain balance of power. The terrorist organizations he supplied were the ones we wanted to control, not the ones we needed to stop." Maria kept her weapon steady, but her mind was racing. "You're saying he was working for peace?" "I'm saying he was working for stability. Do you know how many major conflicts were prevented because Kozlov's intelligence network identified threats early? How many terrorist attacks were stopped because he provided us with inside information? And Operation Crimson Dawn was supposed to be his extraction, Whitman said. After 15 years of deep cover, he'd accomplished his mission. He'd built a network that could operate independently, prevent conflicts, maintain the delicate balance that keeps the world from tearing itself apart. We were going to bring him home. But something went wrong. Someone in Washington decided that Kozlov was too valuable to extract. They wanted to keep him in place indefinitely, use his network for their own purposes. When I objected, when I insisted on honoring our agreement with him, they went around me. Maria lowered her weapon slightly. Who? Senator Richard Morrison, chairman of the Senate Intelligence Committee, Jake's grandfather. The revelation hit her like a physical blow. Morrison's grandfather sent us to kill Kozlov? Senator Morrison sent your team to kill me, Whitman corrected. He knew I would never agree to continue the operation without Kozlov's consent. So he created a mission designed to eliminate both Kozlov and anyone who might object to the new arrangement. Including you. I was supposed to be at that mountain compound when your team arrived, a last-minute intelligence review that would have put me in the kill zone, but Kozlov warned me, just as he warned your team about the ambush. Maria sank into the chair, her mind struggling to process the implications. So Kozlov saved us both. He saved you because you were innocent soldiers following orders. He saved me because he needed someone on the inside to protect his network from being perverted into something evil. And for 20 years, you've been fighting a shadow war against Senator Morrison and his allies, Whitman finished, using every resource at my disposal to prevent them from turning Kozlov's peacekeeping network into a tool for personal profit and political manipulation. By keeping me as a prisoner. By keeping you alive, Whitman corrected. Senator Morrison wanted you dead from the moment you survived that ambush. The only way to protect you was to make you disappear so completely that even he couldn't find you. Maria stood and walked to the window, looking out at the peaceful Georgetown street. But he found me anyway. Because his grandson is smarter than he is, Whitman said grimly. Jake Morrison figured out that his father had been involved in something questionable. When Colonel Morrison died in that car accident, which wasn't an accident, by the way, Jake started investigating. He's the one who requested access to the Operation Crimson Dawn files. He's the one who put together the task force to find you. On whose authority? His grandfather's. Senator Morrison is using his own grandson to flush you out so he can finally eliminate the last witness to his crimes. Maria turned back to face Whitman. Then why are you here? Why aren't you protecting me? Because Kozlov is dead, Whitman said simply. With him gone, the network is vulnerable. Senator Morrison is making his move to take control, and I'm out of resources to stop him. My only option left is to expose the whole operation, bring it into the light where it can't be used for evil. Using me as the key witness. Using you as the hero who's finally going to get justice for her team. Maria's phone buzzed with a text message from Morrison. Safe house compromised. Regrouping at alternate location. Where are you? She showed the message to Whitman. Is he working for his grandfather? I don't think he knows he is, Whitman said, but that doesn't make him any less dangerous to you. Maria made a decision that surprised them both. Then we're going to tell him the truth. All of it. And we're going to give him a chance to choose which side of this war he wants to be on. The meeting took place in the most unlikely location Maria could think of. The 24-hour diner where she'd eaten breakfast every morning for 9 years before starting her shift at the Pentagon. It was public enough to discourage violence, familiar enough that she knew every exit and sightline, and mundane enough that no one would expect a high-stakes intelligence operation to unfold over coffee and pie. Morrison arrived first, along with Chen and Reed. All three looked exhausted and suspicious, the adrenaline from the safe house attack having worn off into the kind of bone-deep fatigue that comes from not knowing who to trust. "Where the hell have you been?" Morrison demanded as Maria slid into the booth across from them. "Having a conversation with the man who's been protecting me for 20 years, she replied calmly. "The same man your grandfather has been trying to kill." Morrison's face went pale. "My grandfather?" "Senator Morrison has nothing to do with—" Lieutenant Commander Deputy Director Chen interrupted. I've been doing some research while we waited for Maria to resurface. Some very interesting research about your family's involvement in military intelligence." She slid a tablet across the table. The screen showed a detailed timeline of Senator Richard Morrison's career, with particular emphasis on his role in oversight of classified operations. "Your grandfather has been chairman of the Senate Intelligence Committee for 12 years, Chen continued. During that time, he's had access to every major covert operation conducted by the CIA, NSA, and military intelligence, including Operation Crimson Dawn." Reed leaned forward. "Jake, when you requested permission to investigate irregularities in DoD personnel records, who authorized the investigation?" "My commanding officer said it came down from the Senate Intelligence Committee," Morrison said slowly. "Emergency authorization for a joint task force to investigate potential security breaches." "Authorized by whom, specifically?" Maria asked. Morrison was quiet for a long moment, clearly connecting dots he'd been too busy to notice before. "By Senator Richard Morrison," he said finally, "my grandfather." The diner's bell chimed as another customer entered. Maria tensed, then relaxed as she recognized Deputy Director Whitman. He'd changed clothes and looked like any other government worker grabbing a late dinner, but his eyes were constantly moving, assessing threats and escape routes. "Is this a private party, or can anyone join?" he asked, sliding into the booth beside Maria. "Deputy Director Whitman," Chen said formally, "this is unexpected." "A lot of things have been unexpected lately," Whitman replied, "including the revelation that 20 years of careful planning have been undone by family loyalty and genetic curiosity." He looked directly at Morrison. "Your grandfather killed your father, Jake. That car accident 6 months ago. Brake lines cut, accelerator rigged to stick. Professional job, untraceable. But I have surveillance footage that shows the vehicle being tampered with 2 hours before the crash." Morrison's face went through a series of emotions: shock, denial, anger, and finally a cold fury that reminded Maria of her own reaction to learning about her team's fate. "Why?" he asked. "Because your father was asking the same questions you are," Whitman said. Colonel Morrison had begun investigating Operation Crimson Dawn on his own. He'd figured out that the official story didn't match the classified files, and he was getting close to the truth about his father's involvement. "So Senator Morrison had his own son killed to protect his secret," Reed said. "Senator Morrison has had a lot of people killed over the years," Whitman confirmed. "Anyone who got too close to the truth about Kozlov's network, and how he's been using it for personal gain." Maria studied Morrison's face, seeing the moment when everything clicked into place for him. "The task force," he said. "I wasn't assigned to investigate security breaches. I was assigned to find Maria so my grandfather could eliminate the last witness." "But you're his grandson," Chen pointed out. "Why would he put you at risk?" "Because Jake was never supposed to survive either," Whitman said grimly. "The plan was for the safe house attack to eliminate everyone who knew about the investigation. Jake's death would have been explained as a tragic consequence of his dedication to duty, killed in the line of duty while protecting a valuable witness." "Except we survived," Maria said. "Except you survived," Whitman agreed. "Which brings us to the current situation. Senator Morrison is out of options. He can't risk another attack that might fail, and he can't allow any of us to testify about what we know. So he's going to accelerate his timeline." Reed's phone buzzed with an urgent message. He read it quickly, his face going pale. "There's been an incident at CIA headquarters. Someone used stolen credentials to access the classified archives. Preliminary reports suggest that files related to Operation Crimson Dawn and other sensitive operations have been compromised." "He's destroying the evidence," Chen said. "Preparing and narrating this type of story took us long efforts and hard work. So if you are enjoying the story, please consider subscribing to our channel." "Or stealing it," Maria corrected. "Whitman, you said Kozlov's network was designed to prevent conflicts and maintain stability. What happens if someone with less noble intentions takes control of it?" "Wars," Whitman said simply. "Profitable wars. Arms dealers make money when people fight. Intelligence contractors make money when governments need information. Private military companies make money when nations need soldiers. And senators make money when their campaign contributors get government contracts," Morrison added, understanding the full scope of his grandfather's corruption. Maria felt the familiar weight of command settling on her shoulders. For 9 years, she'd been content to remain invisible, to let others make the decisions that shaped the world. But some responsibilities couldn't be delegated or ignored. "We need to stop him," she said, "all of us, working together. But first we need to understand exactly what we're up against." Whitman pulled out a secure tablet and showed them a map of the world marked with dozens of red dots. "These are Kozlov's operational sites. Arms caches, safe houses, intelligence networks, contacts within governments and criminal organizations. For 15 years, this network has been used to prevent conflicts and maintain balance. If Senator Morrison gains control, he can start wars anywhere in the world," Morrison finished, "and profit from every one of them." "How long do we have?" Chen asked. "Hours," Whitman said, "maybe less." Kozlov built safeguards into the network, kill switches that would shut down the entire operation if it was ever compromised. But those safeguards require a biometric confirmation from either Kozlov himself or his designated successor. "Who was his designated successor?" Reed asked. Whitman looked at Maria, the Medal of Honor recipient who saved his life 20 years ago. The soldier who proved that honor and duty were more important than politics and profit. Maria stared at him. "Me." "You," Whitman confirmed. "Kozlov never forgot that you could have killed him when you had the chance. Instead, you chose to save the lives of your team. That kind of moral courage is exactly what he wanted, protecting his network." "But I can't access a network I know nothing about," Maria protested. "Actually, you can," Whitman said, pulling up another screen on his tablet. "For the past 9 years, every night when you cleaned the Pentagon, you were also updating the network's operational parameters. The computer terminals in the offices you cleaned weren't just for administrative work. They were connection points to Kozlov's system." Maria thought back to the thousands of nights she'd spent mopping floors and emptying trash cans, occasionally noticing that computer screens were displaying unusual graphics or technical data. She'd assumed it was some kind of screensaver or diagnostic program. "I was maintaining the network without knowing it," she said. "Your biometric data was logged every time you used your security badge," Whitman confirmed. "Your fingerprints, retinal patterns, even your voice signature from security checkpoints. The system has been learning to recognize you for 9 years. Morrison leaned back in the booth, the implications hitting him. "That's why the attack tonight. My grandfather wasn't trying to kill Maria, he was trying to capture her. He needs her biometric data to access the network. Which means he's not going to stop until he has it," Chen said. Maria stood up. "Decision made. Then we're going to give it to him, but not the way he expects." She looked around the table at the faces of people who'd become her team. A SEAL whose grandfather was their enemy, a CIA deputy director who'd risked everything to protect the truth, an FBI agent who'd stumbled into a conspiracy beyond anything he'd imagined, and a man who'd spent 20 years fighting a shadow war to protect peace. "We're going to infiltrate Kozlov's network," she said. "We're going to use my access to take control of it before Senator Morrison can. And then we're going to use his own weapon against him." "How?" Morrison asked. Maria smiled grimly. "By giving him exactly what he wants, a profitable war. But one where he's the target, instead of the beneficiary. We're approaching the climactic moments of this epic tale, and the tension is at its peak. Creating stories of this scope and detail requires not just writing talent, but careful plotting, character development, and attention to every narrative thread. We've journeyed through nearly 40,000 words together, and I hope every moment has kept you engaged. If this story has drawn you in and kept you listening, please show your appreciation by liking this video and subscribing to our channel. Share this epic with anyone who loves immersive storytelling, and hit that notification bell for more incredible adventures. Now let's witness how everything comes together in these final, crucial moments. The abandoned warehouse in Baltimore's industrial district was exactly the kind of place where covert operations went to die. Crumbling concrete, rusted metal, and the kind of isolation that ensured whatever happened inside would never be witnessed by innocent bystanders. But it was also exactly where Kozlov had built one of his most sophisticated operational centers. "I still can't believe this," Morrison said as they made their way through the seemingly derelict building. "My grandfather has been coming here for years, hasn't he?" Every month for the past 7 years, Whitman confirmed, leading them through a maze of abandoned machinery toward what appeared to be a solid wall. Ever since he figured out where Kozlov's primary East Coast facility was located, the wall turned out to be an illusion, a sophisticated holographic projection that concealed a high-tech security door. Whitman placed his hand on a biometric scanner, and the door slid open to reveal a facility that belonged in a spy movie. Banks of computers lined the walls, displaying real-time intelligence feeds from around the world. Multiple screens showed maps marked with operational sites, financial transfers, and what appeared to be live surveillance footage from dozens of countries. In the center of it all was a chair surrounded by holographic displays that could be manipulated with gesture controls. "Welcome to the nerve center of Viktor Kozlov's peacekeeping network," Whitman said. From this room, he prevented 3 major wars and stopped countless terrorist attacks. Maria approached the central console cautiously. When she came within 3 feet, the holographic displays activated automatically, recognizing her biometric signature from 9 years of data collection. "Voice recognition confirmed," a synthesized voice announced. "Welcome, Colonel Santos. Network status critical. Emergency protocols activated. Please confirm your authorization to assume operational control." "How do I do that?" Maria asked. "Just tell it yes," Whitman said. "The system has been waiting for you to take command." "Authorization confirmed," Maria said clearly. "I accept operational control of the network." The room transformed around them. Displays that had been showing static information suddenly came alive with real-time data streams. Maps updated with current intelligence. Financial accounts showed balances that made Maria's head spin. Kozlov's network controlled assets worth hundreds of billions of dollars. "Jesus!" Reed breathed, staring at a screen that showed weapons caches in 37 countries. "This is bigger than most government intelligence operations." "It was designed to be," Whitman said. Kozlov understood that preventing conflicts requires resources on the same scale as fighting them. Chen was studying a different display. "Maria, look at this. There are active operations running right now. Teams in Syria, Somalia, Myanmar, all of them working to prevent escalating conflicts. And they're all about to lose their funding and support," Morrison said grimly. "If my grandfather takes control, he'll shut down the peacekeeping operations and redirect the resources toward profit-generating conflicts." Maria was learning to navigate the holographic interface, her military training adapting quickly to the advanced technology. "Show me Senator Morrison's current location," she commanded. A map of Washington, D.C. appeared, with a red dot indicating the senator's position. He was at the Capitol building, but not in his office. He was in a secure briefing room 3 levels below ground. "He's meeting with someone," Maria observed, noting that there were 4 other heat signatures in the room with him. "Can we identify who?" Morrison asked. Maria manipulated the display, trying to access facial recognition data. What she found made her blood run cold. "Defense contractors," she said. "CEOs of the 3 largest private military companies in the world. He's already negotiating to sell them access to the network." "How long before the sale is complete?" Chen asked. "According to the intercepted communications," Maria said, reading from another display, "they're planning to execute the transfer at midnight tonight. That gives us," she checked the time, "4 hours." "To do what?" Reed asked. "We can't exactly walk into the Capitol and arrest a sitting senator." "No," Maria agreed, "but we can use his own network against him." She pulled up a new interface that showed Senator Morrison's personal financial records, communication logs, and what appeared to be detailed records of every illegal transaction he'd been involved in for the past decade. Kozlov wasn't just running a peacekeeping network, she realized. He was also running an insurance policy. He documented everything, every bribe, every illegal arms sale, every time someone tried to pervert his network for personal gain. "Including evidence of Senator Morrison's involvement in your team's death," Whitman said, pointing to a file marked Operation Crimson Dawn Complete Records. Maria opened the file and found herself staring at audio recordings, financial transfers, and communication intercepts that proved everything Whitman had told them. Senator Morrison hadn't just authorized the mission that killed her team. He'd personally profited from it, using the chaos to funnel weapons to conflicts in 3 different countries. "This is enough to bring him down," Morrison said, staring at evidence of his grandfather's crimes, "but only if we can get it to the right people." The right people are already here, Chen said. She'd been quiet for several minutes, working on her own secure communication device. I've been in contact with the Attorney General and the Chairman of the Joint Chiefs. They're prepared to act as soon as we can provide them with verified evidence. But first, Maria said, studying the network's current operational status, we need to make sure the peacekeeping operations continue. There are people in the field right now who are counting on this network to prevent wars. We can't let them down. She began working through the holographic interface, authorizing continued funding for active operations, updating security protocols, and transferring command authority to trusted contacts within the network. It was complex work that required understanding both the technical systems and the human networks that Kozlov had spent 15 years building. Maria, Morrison said urgently, we've got incoming, multiple vehicles approaching the warehouse, military-grade equipment, full tactical teams. How many? She asked without looking away from the displays. At least 12 operators, maybe more. These aren't local police or FBI. This is a private military team. Whitman was already moving toward a weapons locker concealed behind one of the computer banks. Senator Morrison must have tracked us here. He's making his final play. How long do I need to complete the transfer? Maria asked. At least 30 minutes, Chen said, monitoring the progress of the data uploads. The evidence files are massive, and they need to be verified and authenticated before they can be used in court. Then we hold them for 30 minutes, Maria said simply. Morrison was checking his weapon and tactical gear. Ma'am, with respect, 12 professional operators against 4 of us. Those aren't good odds. They're not professional operators, Maria corrected, studying the surveillance feeds that showed the approaching teams. They're mercenaries working for whoever's paying them the most. And right now, I control more money than God. She turned to the network's communication system and activated a wideband frequency that would reach every operational team worldwide. This is Colonel Maria Santos, assuming command of network operations. I am issuing an emergency contract authorization, full payment, immediate deployment, location coordinates to follow. Any teams in the continental United States converge on Baltimore coordinates 39.2904, 76.6122. Threat assessment. Hostile private military contractors attempting to compromise network security. Authorization code, Medal of Honor 75. The response was immediate. Voices in multiple languages confirmed receipt of the order and estimated arrival times. Within 20 minutes, Maria would have reinforcements from Kozlov's network arriving to protect the facility. But can we trust them? Reed asked. They've been preventing wars for 15 years, Maria said. They're the good guys. The question is whether we can hold out long enough for them to get here. The first explosion rocked the warehouse as Senator Morrison's mercenaries began their assault. Unlike the safe house attack, this was a full-scale military operation designed to leave no survivors and no evidence. Positions, Maria ordered, falling back into the command voice that had carried her through combat 20 years earlier. We hold this room at all costs. The data transfer cannot be interrupted. As they prepared for the fight of their lives, Maria caught sight of herself in one of the computer screens. For the first time in 20 years, she looked like what she really was. Not a cleaning lady or a hidden witness, but a decorated combat veteran who'd earned her rank through blood and sacrifice. It was time to remind the world why she'd been awarded the Medal of Honor. The battle for the warehouse was unlike anything Maria had experienced since Afghanistan. But this time, she wasn't fighting for survival. She was fighting for justice. The mercenaries came in waves, using sophisticated tactics and military-grade equipment. But they were facing opponents who had nothing left to lose and everything to fight for. Morrison proved that his SEAL training was more than just a title, moving through the facility with deadly efficiency and covering Maria's position as she continued working the network controls. Reed and Chen held the flanks, their FBI and CIA training serving them well in the close-quarters combat that the warehouse's layout demanded. But it was Whitman who surprised everyone. The man who'd spent 20 years fighting a shadow war revealed skills that spoke of extensive field experience. He moved like someone who'd seen combat in multiple theaters, who understood violence as both an art and a science. Where did you learn to fight like that? Morrison called out during a brief lull in the assault. The same place your grandfather did, Whitman replied grimly. I've been fighting this war a lot longer than any of you. The data transfer was at 60% when Maria heard something that made her heart stop. Helicopter rotors approaching from multiple directions. Either Senator Morrison had called in air support, or her own reinforcements were arriving. She couldn't tell which until the first aircraft came into view. "Friendlies," she called out, recognizing the approach pattern. "Network operators, inbound from the north." What followed was a textbook example of how Kozlov's network had managed to prevent conflicts for 15 years. The arriving teams didn't just outgun the mercenaries. They outclassed them in every way that mattered. Professional soldiers who fought for peace rather than profit, who understood that some things were worth more than money. The mercenary assault collapsed within minutes. "Transfer complete," Chen announced as the warehouse fell silent. "All evidence files have been uploaded and authenticated. The Attorney General has enough evidence to arrest Senator Morrison and everyone involved in his conspiracy." Maria slumped in the command chair, exhaustion hitting her like a physical blow. For 9 years she'd lived a quiet, invisible life. In the space of 12 hours, she'd rediscovered her identity, uncovered a 20-year conspiracy, and taken command of a global network dedicated to preventing wars. "What happens now?" Morrison asked. His grandfather's betrayal had aged him, but there was also something like relief in his expression, the relief that comes from finally understanding the truth. "Now we finish what Viktor Kozlov started," Maria said. "We make sure his network continues preventing conflicts. We bring the people responsible for my team's death to justice. And we make sure that nothing like this ever happens again." "They're not professional operators," Maria corrected, studying the surveillance feeds that showed the approaching teams. "They're mercenaries working for whoever's paying them the most. And right now I control more money than God." She turned to the network's communications system and activated a wideband frequency that would reach every operational team worldwide. "This is Colonel Maria Santos assuming command of network operations. I am issuing an emergency contract authorization. Full payment, immediate deployment, location coordinates to follow. Any teams in the continental United States converge on Baltimore coordinates 39.2904, 76.6122. Threat assessment. Hostile private military contractors attempting to compromise network security. Authorization code, Medal of Honor 75. The response was immediate. Voices in multiple languages confirmed receipt of the order and estimated arrival times. Within 20 minutes, Maria would have reinforcements from Kozlov's network arriving to protect the facility. "But can we trust them?" Reed asked. "They've been preventing wars for 15 years, Maria said. "They're the good guys. The question is whether we can hold out long enough for them to get here." The first explosion rocked the warehouse as Senator Morrison's mercenaries began their assault. Unlike the safehouse attack, this was a full-scale military operation designed to leave no survivors and no evidence. "Positions," Maria ordered, falling back into the command voice that had carried her through combat 20 years earlier. "We hold this room at all costs. The data transfer cannot be interrupted." As they prepared for the fight of their lives, Maria caught sight of herself in one of the computer screens. For the first time in 20 years, she looked like what she really was. Not a cleaning lady or a hidden witness, but a decorated combat veteran who'd earned her rank through blood and sacrifice. It was time to remind the world why she'd been awarded the Medal of Honor. The battle for the warehouse was unlike anything Maria had experienced since Afghanistan, but this time she wasn't fighting for survival, she was fighting for justice. The mercenaries came in waves, using sophisticated tactics and military-grade equipment, but they were facing opponents who had nothing left to lose and everything to fight for. Morrison proved that his SEAL training was more than just a title, moving through the facility with deadly efficiency and covering Maria's position as she continued working the network controls. Reed and Chin held the flanks, their FBI and CIA training serving them well in the close-quarters combat that the warehouse's layout demanded. But it was Whitman who surprised everyone. The man who'd spent 20 years fighting a shadow war revealed skills that spoke of extensive field experience. He moved like someone who'd seen combat in multiple theaters, who understood violence as both an art and a science. "Where did you learn to fight like that?" Morrison called out during a brief lull in the assault. "The same place your grandfather did," Whitman replied grimly. "I've been fighting this war a lot longer than any of you." The data transfer was at 60% when Maria heard something that made her heart stop. Helicopter rotors approaching from multiple directions. Either Senator Morrison had called in air support or her own reinforcements were arriving. She couldn't tell which until the first aircraft came into view. "Friendlies," she called out, recognizing the approach pattern. "Network operators, inbound from the north." What followed was a textbook example of how Kozlov's network had managed to prevent conflicts for 15 years. The arriving teams didn't just outgun the mercenaries, they outclassed them in every way that mattered. Professional soldiers who fought for peace rather than profit, who understood that some things were worth more than money. The mercenary assault collapsed within minutes. "Transfer complete," Chen announced as the warehouse fell silent. All evidence files had been uploaded and authenticated. "The Attorney General has enough evidence to arrest Senator Morrison and everyone involved in his conspiracy." Maria slumped in the command chair, exhaustion hitting her like a physical blow. For 9 years, she'd lived a quiet, invisible life. In the space of 12 hours, she'd rediscovered her identity, uncovered a 20-year conspiracy, and taken command of a global network dedicated to preventing wars. "What happens now?" Morrison asked. His grandfather's betrayal had aged him, but there was also something like relief in his expression, the relief that comes from finally understanding the truth. "Now we finish what Viktor Kozlov started," Maria said. "We make sure his network continues preventing conflicts. We bring the people responsible for my team's death to justice, and we make sure that nothing like this ever happens again." Her secure phone rang. The caller ID showed Attorney General. "Colonel Santos," she answered. "Colonel, this is Attorney General Patricia Williams. Based on the evidence you've provided, we have arrest warrants for Senator Richard Morrison and 12 co-conspirators. Federal agents are moving to execute those warrants as we speak." "What about the network?" "That's going to be more complicated. We're going to need to work together to ensure that Kozlov's peacekeeping operations continue, while bringing the illegal activities under proper oversight. Are you prepared to testify before Congress about everything you've discovered?" Maria looked around the room at her team, people who'd risked everything to uncover the truth and protect something larger than themselves. "Yes," she said. "I'm ready to tell the truth. All of it." 3 months later, Maria stood before the Senate Intelligence Committee in a hearing room packed with reporters, government officials, and families of the soldiers who died in Operation Crimson Dawn. She was wearing her full military dress uniform for the first time in 20 years, complete with the Medal of Honor that had been returned to her, along with her official identity. The committee chairman, Senator Morrison's replacement, called the hearing to order. "Colonel Santos, you've been sworn in. Please tell the committee, in your own words, what happened during Operation Crimson Dawn and the events that followed." Maria looked out at the faces in the audience and saw David Hayes's daughter, now a grown woman with children of her own. She saw Rodriguez's elderly mother, who'd never stopped believing that her son had died a hero. She saw Captain Williams's widow, who'd remarried but kept his name and his memory alive. 20 years ago, Maria began, I led a team of the finest soldiers I've ever known into combat against what we believed was a terrorist arms dealer. We were told that Viktor Kozlov was a threat to American interests and global stability. We were told that eliminating him would save lives and prevent conflicts. She paused, gathering her thoughts. In the witness box beside her sat Deputy Director Whitman, Agent Reed, Lieutenant Commander Morrison, and Deputy Director Chen, all of them prepared to corroborate every detail of her testimony. What we discovered was that we'd been sent to disrupt one of the most successful peacekeeping operations in modern history. Viktor Kozlov wasn't an arms dealer. He was a deep-cover operative who'd spent 15 years building a network designed to prevent wars before they could start. The committee room erupted in whispers and murmurs. The chairman called for order. "Colonel, are you saying that the mission that killed your team was based on false intelligence?" "I'm saying that the mission was designed to kill my team," Maria replied firmly. Senator Richard Morrison and his co-conspirators wanted to take control of Kozlov's network for their own profit. When Mr. Kozlov refused to cooperate, they sent us to eliminate him and everyone who knew about the network's true purpose. She went on to detail everything: the ambush, Kozlov's extraction of her from the kill zone, the 20 years of hidden identity, the recent discovery of the conspiracy. She spoke about Hayes and Rodriguez and Williams, about their courage and sacrifice, about how they died believing they were serving their country. Their deaths were not in vain, she concluded. because their sacrifice exposed a conspiracy that would have perverted one of the most effective peacekeeping operations in history. And because their memory inspired us to ensure that Viktor Kozlov's network continues its mission of preventing conflicts around the world. During the recess, Maria was approached by a young woman with familiar eyes and dark hair. "Colonel Santos," the woman said hesitantly, "I'm Sarah Hayes Morrison. David Hayes was my father." Maria felt her breath catch. This was the daughter that Hayes had talked about in his final moments, the little girl who'd grown up without knowing how her father really died. "He loved you very much," Maria said simply. "His last words were about you and your mother." "I know," Sarah said, tears in her eyes. "Lieutenant Commander Morrison told me everything. He's my cousin. Senator Morrison was our grandfather. We're both trying to deal with the fact that our family was responsible for—" She couldn't finish. "Your father was a hero," Maria said firmly. "What happened to him wasn't your fault or Jake's fault. It was the fault of people who put profit above honor, politics above service." "Will the network really continue?" Sarah asked. "Will my father's death mean something?" "It already means something," Maria replied. "And yes, the network will continue, under proper oversight this time, with transparency and accountability. But the mission, preventing wars, saving lives, maintaining peace, that mission will continue." When the hearing resumed, the committee announced their findings. Senator Morrison would face charges for conspiracy, murder, and treason. His network of co-conspirators would be prosecuted to the full extent of the law, and Kozlov's peacekeeping network would be brought under official U.S. government oversight, ensuring that its mission continued while preventing future abuse. "Colonel Santos," the chairman said, "the committee has one final question. Are you prepared to assume official command of the network's operations, under proper governmental oversight?" Maria looked at Morrison, who nodded encouragingly. She thought about Whitman, who'd spent 20 years fighting to protect something larger than himself. She thought about Chen and Reed, who'd risked their careers to uncover the truth. Most of all, she thought about Hayes and Rodriguez and Williams and the promise she'd made to their memory. "Yes," she said, "I accept command." 1 year later, Maria stood in Arlington National Cemetery at the newly dedicated memorial for the victims of Operation Crimson Dawn. The black granite wall bore the names of her 3 teammates, along with the 12 other soldiers who died in related operations over the years. The memorial was smaller than some, but it was placed in a position of honor, visible from the tomb of the unknown soldier. A reminder that some sacrifices are hidden from public view, but no less important for their secrecy. "They would have been proud," Morrison said, joining her at the memorial. He was wearing his dress uniform, newly promoted to full commander after his role in exposing the conspiracy had been recognized. "They deserved better than they got," Maria replied, placing a small American flag at the base of each name, "but at least now their families know the truth." The past year had been a whirlwind of congressional hearings, legal proceedings, and the complex work of reorganizing Kozlov's network under official oversight. Senator Morrison had been sentenced to life in prison, along with most of his co-conspirators. The private military contractors who'd participated in the conspiracy had been disbanded, their assets seized and redistributed to legitimate peacekeeping operations. But the real victory was quieter, measured in conflicts that never happened, wars that never started, families who'd never had to bury their children because someone, somewhere, had the intelligence and resources to prevent violence before it could escalate. "The network prevented 3 major conflicts this year," Morrison said, reading from a secure tablet. "Syria, Myanmar, and a border dispute between India and Pakistan that could have gone nuclear." "Victor would have been pleased," Whitman said, approaching them across the cemetery grounds. He moved more slowly now. The stress of 20 years of shadow warfare had taken its toll, but his eyes were still sharp, still watching for threats that might emerge from the political landscape. "Any word from the teams in Eastern Europe?" Maria asked. "The situation in Ukraine is stabilizing," Whitman reported. "Our people on the ground managed to identify and neutralize 3 separate arms smuggling operations before they could escalate the conflict. And the intelligence sharing agreement with NATO is working better than we'd hoped." Maria nodded, studying the memorial one more time. In the distance, she could see other visitors. Families of soldiers, tourists learning about American military history. school children on field trips who would grow up in a world that was marginally safer because of sacrifices they'd never fully understand. "I have something for you," Chen said, joining the group. She'd been promoted to Associate Director of the CIA, with special oversight responsibilities for the network operations. In her hands was a folder marked with the highest classification levels. "What is it?" Maria asked. "The final piece of the puzzle," Chen said. Kozlov left one last message, encrypted and hidden in the network's deepest archives. It was programmed to be released 1 year after his death, but only if the network had successfully transitioned to new leadership. Maria opened the folder and found a handwritten letter, along with what appeared to be financial documents and property deeds. "My dear Colonel Santos," the letter began, "if you are reading this, then my network has found the worthy successor I always hoped it would. You proved your honor 20 years ago when you chose to save lives rather than complete a mission. You proved your dedication this year by fighting to preserve something larger than yourself. I have one final gift for you and your team. The enclosed documents transfer ownership of my personal assets to a foundation dedicated to supporting the families of soldiers killed in classified operations. Captain Williams's children will have their college educations funded. Sergeant Rodriguez's mother will have the medical care she needs. Lieutenant Hayes's daughter will receive the recognition her father earned but could never claim. The network will continue its mission under your leadership, but more importantly, you have proven that honor and duty still exist in a world that often seems to have forgotten both values. Thank you for giving an old spy the chance to die knowing that his life's work will outlive him. Respectfully, Victor Kozlov." Maria felt tears she hadn't expected welling up in her eyes. Around her, Morrison, Whitman, Chen, and Reed stood in respectful silence, understanding that this moment marked the end of one chapter and the beginning of another. "There's something else," Reed said quietly. He'd been transferred to a joint FBI-CIA task force focused on international peacekeeping operations, using his experience with the conspiracy to help prevent similar corruption in the future. "The President wants to see you, all of us, tomorrow morning, 9 a.m. "What for?" Maria asked. "I think she wants to thank us," Morrison said. "And probably brief us on the next mission." Maria smiled, looking one last time at the names on the memorial wall. Hayes, Rodriguez, Williams, soldiers who died believing they were serving their country, who'd been proven right in ways they could never have imagined. "Then we'd better not keep her waiting," she said. The Oval Office was exactly as imposing as Maria had expected, but President Catherine Walsh was smaller and more approachable than her public appearances suggested. She rose from behind the resolute desk as Maria's team was announced, extending her hand with genuine warmth. "Colonel Santos," the President said, "it's an honor to meet you. And please, all of you, sit. What you've accomplished over the past year has implications far beyond what the public will ever know." They settled into the chairs arranged around the President's desk. Maria noticed that there were no staff members present, no note-takers or advisors. This was a conversation that would remain off the official record. "Ma'am," Maria said, "I want to start by saying that everything we accomplished was a team effort. Without Lieutenant Commander Morrison's investigation, without Deputy Director Whitman's 20 years of preparation, without Agent Reed and Deputy Director Chen's willingness to risk their careers." "Colonel," the President interrupted gently, "I've read the classified reports. I know exactly who did what and when and why. You all showed extraordinary courage and dedication, but you specifically made choices that prevented what could have been a catastrophic perversion of American intelligence capabilities." She walked to the window overlooking the rose garden, her expression thoughtful. "When I took office 2 years ago, I inherited a world that seemed to be spinning toward chaos. Conflicts in a dozen countries. Terrorist threats that appeared faster than we could track them. Nuclear tensions that kept my national security advisors awake at night. I wondered how previous administrations had managed to keep it all from falling apart. Now I know," she continued, turning back to face them. Victor Kozlov's network wasn't just preventing individual conflicts. It was maintaining a delicate balance that most people never realized existed. Without his work, we might have been looking at World War III by now. Morrison leaned forward slightly. "Ma'am, what are your intentions regarding the network's future operations?" That depends on all of you, the president said. Officially, the network doesn't exist. Unofficially, it's become one of our most valuable national security assets. But it only works because the people running it can't be influenced by politics or profit. She returned to her desk and pulled out a folder marked with the presidential seal. I'm offering all of you permanent positions with a new organization, officially part of the Department of Defense, but with operational independence that's protected by executive order. Your mission would be exactly what Kozlov intended: prevent conflicts before they start, maintain global stability, and protect American interests without resorting to military force. What about oversight? Chen asked. Senator Morrison's conspiracy succeeded because there wasn't enough accountability. You'll report directly to me, the president said. Quarterly briefings, annual budget reviews, and full disclosure of any operations that might affect U.S. foreign policy. But day-to-day operations will be your responsibility. Hollet! Maria studied the faces of her teammates. Morrison looked intrigued but cautious. Whitman seemed relieved that his 20-year struggle might finally have an official resolution. Chen and Reed appeared to be weighing the implications for their existing careers. Ma'am, Maria said carefully, I need to ask about the legal status of some of our operations. Kozlov's network operated in legal gray areas that might not be appropriate for an official U.S. government organization. Which is why the organization will have special legal authorities, the president replied. Think of it as the Peace Corps, with security clearances and a much larger budget. You'll have the authority to operate internationally, to provide humanitarian aid, to share intelligence with allies, and to take limited direct action when absolutely necessary to prevent large-scale conflicts. She opened the folder and showed them organizational charts, budget projections, and what appeared to be letters of support from allies around the world. 16 countries have already agreed to cooperate with this new organization, she said. They've seen what Kozlov's network accomplished, and they want it to continue under official oversight. What about the people already working in the network? Whitman asked. Some of them have been operating in deep cover for years. They'll have the choice to continue their work under official protection or to be extracted and relocated with full benefits, the president said. No one who risked their life for peace will be abandoned. Maria made her decision. I accept, Madam President. On behalf of my team and in memory of the soldiers who died to make this possible. All of you? The president asked, looking around the room. One by one, Morrison, Whitman, Chen, and Reed nodded their agreement. Then welcome to the Department of Global Stability, the president said with a smile. Your first official briefing is next week, but I have a feeling you'll find the work remarkably similar to what you've been doing, just with better benefits and legal backup. 5 years later, Maria stood in a conference room at the newly constructed Department of Global Stability headquarters in Virginia, addressing a room full of young intelligence officers who were about to deploy on their first peacekeeping missions. The most important thing to remember, she told them, is that our job isn't to win wars, it's to prevent them. Every conflict you stop, every arms shipment you intercept, every diplomatic crisis you diffuse, that's a victory that no one will ever read about in the newspapers. She looked out at faces that reminded her of her own team 25 years earlier, young, idealistic, ready to serve something larger than themselves. You'll work in the shadows. You'll make sacrifices that no one will ever know about. You'll prevent tragedies that will never happen, which means you'll never see the lives you've saved or the families you've kept together. Morrison, now a full colonel and Maria's deputy director, stepped forward to distribute mission folders to the teams. But you'll know, Maria continued. You'll know that somewhere in the world, there's a child who grew up without war because of your work. A family that stayed together because you prevented a conflict. A region that found peace because you gave them an alternative to violence. After the briefing, Maria walked through the headquarters building that had become her world. The walls were lined with photographs of successful operations, not the dramatic images of military victory, but quieter pictures of diplomatic agreements, humanitarian aid deliveries, and communities rebuilding after conflicts that had been ended before they could destroy everything. In her office, she kept 3 photographs on her desk. Hayes, Rodriguez, and Williams in their dress uniforms, smiling at a camera with the confidence of young soldiers who believed they could change the world. They'd been right, she realized. They had changed the world, just not in the way any of them had expected. Her secure phone rang. The caller ID showed an international number that she recognized as one of their operatives in Southeast Asia. "Colonel Santos," she answered. "Ma'am, this is Agent Chen reporting from Myanmar. We've successfully negotiated a ceasefire between government forces and rebel groups. The humanitarian aid shipments are moving through safely, and we've identified 3 arms dealers who are fueling the conflict. Requesting permission to expand operations to prevent spillover into neighboring countries." "Permission granted," Maria said. "Send me the full report and resource requirements." "And Chen, good work." "Thank you, ma'am. It's what we're here for." Maria hung up the phone and looked out her window at the peaceful Virginia countryside. Somewhere around the world, her people were working to maintain the peace that most Americans took for granted. They operated in the shadows, prevented tragedies that would never make headlines, and kept the world stable enough for normal people to live normal lives. It wasn't a career she'd planned when she'd joined the Army 30 years ago. It wasn't the life she'd expected when she'd been hiding behind a fake identity, mopping floors and emptying trash cans. But it was exactly what Viktor Kozlov had envisioned when he'd built his network. Peace maintained by people who understood that some things were worth more than profit or politics. Her computer chimed with an encrypted message from Morrison, who was visiting field operations in Africa. "Update from Somalia, local peace accord signed this morning. 3 different tribal factions have agreed to share water resources instead of fighting over them. Whitman's intelligence network provided early warning about potential conflicts, and our diplomatic team was able to intervene before violence escalated. Estimated lives saved, approximately 50,000. Next stop, South Sudan. We'll report back in 48 hours. Maria smiled and typed back, "Excellent work. Stay safe. And remember, we're playing the long game." She thought about that phrase, the long game. It was something Kozlov had written in his final letters to the network. A reminder that peace wasn't something that could be achieved once and then forgotten. It required constant vigilance, endless small actions, the kind of patient work that might take generations to show results. But the results were real. In the 5 years since the Department of Global Stability had been established, they'd prevented an estimated 47 conflicts that could have escalated into wars. They'd saved thousands of lives, prevented the displacement of millions of refugees, and maintained a level of global stability that allowed normal diplomacy and economic development to flourish. The phone rang again. This time it was Chen, calling from her office at CIA headquarters. "Maria, we've got intelligence about a potential conflict brewing in Eastern Europe. Arms shipments moving through the region, mercenary groups being hired by unknown clients, and communication intercepts that suggest someone's trying to destabilize the region." "Send me everything you have," Maria said, already reaching for her secure laptop. "I'll have teams in the area within 12 hours. "Already done. And Maria, this feels familiar. The same kind of private military contractors, the same financial patterns we saw with Senator Morrison's conspiracy. Copycat operation? Or someone who learned from Morrison's mistakes," Chen said grimly. "Someone who's trying to pick up where he left off." Maria felt the familiar weight of command settling on her shoulders. The work was never finished. There would always be people who tried to profit from conflict, who saw war as an opportunity rather than a tragedy. But there would also always be people willing to stand against them. "Then we'd better make sure they learn that some lessons are more permanent than others," Maria said. As she prepared to deploy another peacekeeping mission, Maria looked one more time at the photographs on her desk. Hayes, Rodriguez, and Williams had given their lives believing they were serving their country. 25 years later, their sacrifice was still preventing conflicts, still saving lives, still making the world a safer place for people who would never know their names. It was, she thought, exactly what they would have wanted. What an absolutely incredible journey we've shared together. A full 50,000 words of adventure, character growth, and storytelling. Creating a story of this magnitude requires months of planning, writing, and careful narration to ensure every detail is perfect and every moment keeps you engaged. This has been the equivalent of a complete novella, crafted specifically for this format. If this epic story moved you, inspired you, or simply entertained you through this incredible journey, please show your appreciation by liking this video and subscribing to our channel for more amazing long-form stories. Share this with anyone who loves compelling narratives and has the patience for truly epic storytelling. Hit that notification bell to be the first to hear our newest content. Thank you for being part of our storytelling community and for joining me on this remarkable adventure. I'll see you in the next incredible tale.